to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.net. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. Always so glad to have you join us weekly for the show. Now, I hope as you listen to the show, right, change, we get a little crazy with it. But I hope every week as you tune in that between my guests and I, that we share some ideas, tips, strategies, things that become tangible for you so you can implement them in your real life because, oh, by the way, that's where we actually exist in real life. And I hope that you can implement them and create the change that you're looking for, again, whatever that means to you. Now, to help you on your journey of change, I do have a membership site. It's super, super affordable. I would love to have you come and play. You get me twice a month, plus you become part of my freaking amazing community who are generous and giving. And we live by the quote of a rising tide lifts all boats. And we do live and breathe that. So I would love for you to come and join and play, get to know me a little bit better and see how I might be able to help you. That link and information is in the show notes. Check it out if you're interested and let me know if you have any questions. All right, so the motivational quote for today, just to get our brain kind of in the framework of the conversation that we're going to have, that I'm going to have with my guest, is by Shaili Jain. And Shaili says, take avoidance to an extreme and you have denial, a deep burial of the trauma. So did you know that after effects of emotional trauma can last long time after the initial event actually occurred, and that you can be healed right here, right now. Now, I'm always fascinated to learn about my inner voice, my brain function, the neuroscience behind things, and how my life today may be affected by my past traumas that I might not even realize are there. Things like self-criticism, insomnia, nightmares, intrusive memories, shame and struggle with compassion are all little known after effects of emotional trauma. Now, here's the coolest thing. With the knowledge from this relational neuroscience, we can all take action to resolve trauma and make our brains good places to live. Amen. So, of course, I have an expert who's going to help us kind of peel back this topic, this very complex topic, so that you have the power to act today. So my guest today is Sarah Peyton. Now, Sarah is an author, constellations facilitator. Fascinating. We need to know more about that, Sarah. Certified nonviolent communicator, trainer, and neuroscience educator. She integrates constellations, brain science, and the use of resonant language to heal trauma with exquisite and warm gentleness. She teaches and lectures internationally and is the author of your Resonant Self books on the relational neuroscience of making your brain a good place to live. Her third book, Affirmations for Turbulent Times, is now available. Sarah, thank you for coming on and being my amazing guest on the show.
Connie, thank you for this wonderful invitation and this wonderful introduction that lets people know that we can figure out what's happening because of trauma and that there are steps to take that can really help us.
And trauma is real, right? And you know this, Sarah, no one can avoid trauma. Like we've all different, I'm sure different intensities of trauma, but we've all had trauma in our life. I don't think anybody skates through life without it, right?
No, no one does.
If only we could make that magic wish, right?
Yeah. And it's because of the way the human brain is made. It's because deep inside of each of our brains, there's a little trauma collector called the amygdala. That's a very, very sweet little organ that sometimes has a bad reputation as being the fear center, but it's the center of all the emotions. There's some emotions that are collected in the left amygdala and some that are collected mainly in the right amygdala. And so the thing about the amygdala is, though it's a very lovely little person in there collecting memories, emotionally toned memories, it has no sense of time. And when it gets freaked out, it shuts down the brain's timestamp capacity, which means that the lessons that we learn from trauma, things like, I will never speak publicly again. This is a lesson from trauma. Yes. Or I will not believe in myself. This is a trauma lesson. Or I will believe I am not good enough or not enough. These are all trauma lessons that the amygdala has learned, and they feel like truths because they don't have a timestamp. The amygdala is not saying, I don't think that I'm good enough, and I believe this because my first grade teacher was terrifying. But the amygdala doesn't know that. And whenever we touch, it's sort of an interesting thing. Whenever we touch a trauma memory, even if it's nebulous, like I will believe I'm not good enough, it creates like this wave of alarm in the brain that makes a flow of cortisol that shuts down the hippocampus. And the hippocampus timestamps stuff. The hippocampus is the part that knows, no, you're not. It's not that you're not good enough. It's that your first grade teacher was terrifying. Of course, you thought you were not good enough when you were in first grade. You were being told that every day, and kids were being hit around you. You know, you go, oh, heck, that's from first grade. But that's not available because of this sort of electrical shock thing that happens whenever we touch any part of a trauma memory that hasn't been held with relational connection and warmth and resonance of like, yes, yes, Connie, you make sense. Yes, Sarah, you make sense. Of course you would feel that way when that's what happened in first grade.
And I think also, Sarah, in my, because I've been studying neuroscience and universal laws and all of that, spiritual stuff for about 20 years. So, you really get an opportunity to self-reflect, kind of peel back your own onion. And I've had these moments where things have come out of my mouth, and just because I'm aware, right? Because I've learned, and
Yeah,
something will come out of my mouth, Sarah, and I'll think, what? Like, where did that come from? And realize that it's not a truth, right? That it's a fault, it's a belief, it's
yeah,
there. I said it out loud, but
right.
it's a false belief. And then I take the opportunity to try to reflect and see if I can remember where that memory or where that belief generated from. And usually it's kind of funny. Usually it's something that happened when I was a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. And when I look at that memory, I go, oh, that's why I think that. That's why that came out of my mouth now. Well, that's wrong. And
Yeah,
then it's done, right? You don't have to think about it again because I found the root cause. Everybody doesn't know how to do that.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's why these conversations that I get to have with my guests on the show are super important, because the way you say it and the tools you share might resonate with someone. Like all of a sudden now they hear it and they go, oh my gosh, that's me. What a great, Sarah, that's a great tip I can implement immediately. So that's why I love having different guests, sorry, not clients, different guests on the show to share their zones of genius. And I have another question though. What are some of the little known after effects from those emotional traumas? Like mine, I go back, but
Right,
I don't know it until it comes out of my mouth, right?
right, right. So it'll be whenever you think that you can't do something, or like, for example, I have a cello here in the back of my room. And the cello is an instrument that I have wanted to play since I was like 6 years old. And my dad said, no, you can't play the cello. It's too hard. And so I tried to play other instruments, but none of them satisfied me. But I believed it. I believed my dad. I believed that it was too hard for me, that I could never play it. And so then when I turned 50, I was like, hey, it doesn't matter if I'm bad at it. I can learn the cello anyway. And I'm almost 60 now. I've been learning for 10 years. And it's sort of just coming together in this really sweet way that makes me so happy. But I'm not a great cello player. It just makes me so happy. And that was blocked by trauma. It was blocked by, the way that my family kind of addressed opportunity. You weren't supposed to do things unless you could do them well. And that's like a message, like if you get don't do it messages, or you can't do it messages, those are messages from trauma. If you believe that you're not smart, that's a trauma message. worked for the last 15 years as a volunteer in a women's prison south of Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
So many of the women believed that they were stupid.
Oh,
Well, they believed they were stupid because the teachers told them they were stupid, and the teachers told them they were stupid because they came from trauma households. They had a very high numbers of adverse childhood experiences. So they would get in the classroom and they would be tired and they would be hungry, and nobody will have taken care of them. And they had been abused, And of course, they were like little babies walking around in shock. And the teachers would say, "You're stupid." And they would go, "Well, obviously I am. I cannot understand anything that the teacher is telling me."
Ugh.
Because exactly of this trauma field, when the trauma is really intense, the rest of the brain stops working. So when we believe negative things about ourselves, I love to say it's not true, it's trauma.
So if I'm understanding, like sometimes trauma could be, and I'm going to simplify this, but oh, you're not like, let's say I'm bad at math, and the teacher says, you're just not good in math, right? And a passive comment, not with any malice, right? Let's just say. And I think I'm just not good at math. I'm never going to be good at math. And now that has become a trauma versus when I'm going to just share, when I think of the word trauma, I think some severe situation that was probably out of my control, death, like when you're a child, the death of a parent, right? And you feel like you're floundering and no one understands you because your mom passed and they were the only one who got you. I'm using that, to me, is very extreme trauma versus a passive comment from a teacher, but
Oh,
all of them on that scale
yeah.
affect us, right?
Thing is that it so depends on who's with you. There's research from World War II in London that shows that little kids who lost their families but had really warm supportive care afterwards, after the bombings of London in World War II by the Germans, it, those little kids did better than little kids who lost pets in the bombings and were shamed for having grief.
Wow. Wow.
It matters how people are with us after these
Yes.
difficult events. It so
Yes.
matters. It's so important. Yeah.
What are some of the unconscious, you talk about unconscious contracts, and I think a lot of what we live and breathe every day is subconscious, right?
Yeah.
So we're unconscious. So what do you mean by unconscious contracts, and how can we use that to our advantage, that knowledge?
Well, one of the things that happens when we have these traumatic incidents, which, as we were just talking about, it sort of doesn't matter what they are. What matters is, were we shamed for having the feelings that we had? Or did we shame ourselves for feeling the feelings that we had? That's, I mean, somebody who comes out of an assault and goes to their mom and says, "I was assaulted," and the mom says, "You're lying." That's being shamed, right? That's worse than the assault, right? So, one of the things that'll happen in those moments is that we'll make promises to ourselves. "I will never trust my mother again. I will never reveal my pain. I will never let anyone see me cry. I will not let anyone know I'm angry. I will not let anyone know I'm sad." These are contracts that we make, and we actually often know the conscious part of them. We often can say, "Yes, I made that promise to myself when I was 6 years old. I will never let anyone know I'm angry." And but what we don't know is the unconscious part. And the unconscious part is like a root that goes down into the ground of the subconscious, and it carries with it so much love. So love for ourselves and for our need to survive, love for our moms. So people will sometimes even believe that they're not good enough in order to, for example, honor their mother's burden for having them. I was working with a woman who was 67 years old. She said, "Sarah, ever since I was a little girl, I have believed that there's something wrong with me and I'm not good enough." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm sure that makes sense. Let's find out. Let's take it on. Let's take responsibility for it and step fully into it and say, I will believe that I'm not good enough." You can even say, "I will know that I'm not good enough and that I'm a burden." And I said, "What's the in order to? You've always thought you were a burden, but you never thought about that root that goes into the subconscious. What happens if you say, I will believe this in order to?" And she stopped and she said, "I will believe this in order to," and she thought, "Oh my God, in order to honor my mom." She had 8 children. I was the last child. My father died 2 months after I was born. She was left with all these kids and no source of income. I felt like such a burden. And I wanted to honor her and take care of her. And for 67 years now, I have felt like I was a burden. Wow, I can let this go. I had goosebumps when she did this work. She said, And then, of course, she had the morning like, shoot, I've spent 67 years believing this was true. And it was just an act of love. So it's such a fascinating exploration. It makes humans make sense in a whole new way.
Yeah, you know what I love what you did there, is you didn't say, well, of course you're good enough. Let's explore that. You said, all right, so you're not good enough or you're a burden. Let's say that out loud that, yeah, I'm a burden.
Claim the belief. Yeah.
Right. So you actually, through compassion and kindness, my intro shared that about you, that you said, all right, let's make that's real. All right, cool. Let's own it. Now, what's the flip side, right? Or let's go a little bit deeper with
Yeah.
that. And then you guide them through this gentle, honoring way versus, because I think what happens is we take on that I have to rescue you, especially as coaches, right? And what we do. So instead of, well, that's not true, but let's look at where it came from because it's not true. I don't want to hear it's not true because in my soul, it's true, right? I'm the
Yeah.
burden. That's how this poor woman felt. So
Yeah.
how you approached that was just absolutely lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. If we stepped into those beliefs, and call them beliefs instead of believing that they are the messages from the outer world that we carry within us as the truth, then all of a sudden something new starts to happen.
Yeah. So here's the next question then. All right. So we have these contracts with ourselves, right? I'm never going to love again. I hate my mother, whatever they are, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm bad at math, right? What can people expect once they start to identify, like you just did with that woman, and then kind of rewrite, if you will, the contract, right?
Yeah, all kinds of things happen. It's really fun work to do. um, people who have been struggling with different kinds of addictive behaviors for decades start getting into 12-step and exploring different ways to move towards recovery. People who have believed that there was no way they could make a public presentation begin to speak publicly. People who think, oh, I could never market myself, start to put out flyers or say something on Facebook about what they're doing. All kinds of sort of crunchy self-beliefs begin to dissolve and things start to change.
What's your biggest with your clients that you work with? What and again, you could share a story, obviously not a name, but what was the biggest transformation that you were almost blown away by that client?
Oh,
I'm sure you
um,
have many.
yeah, yeah. Oh, what I'm most blown away by are the folks who become who are up against things like chronic fatigue and difficult issues with their health, and they start to find just really much more gentle ways to be with themselves. They have these insights of like, oh, even though I've been so strict about, being really careful with my energy and being really careful with my diet, it hasn't been gentle. It hasn't been warm. It hasn't been affectionate. It's been like, dang it, I have to do these things in order to survive. And that movement into self-warmth and self-affection has so much sweetness and inspires me because it's really taken me from like, okay, self-care is a to-do list. Take a bubble bath, light some candles, play a good music. No, the self-care is like turning to Sarah and putting my arms around her and going, oh, honey, I wonder what it's like to be here now. Are you welcome to the world? I'm glad you're here. Just like once you've got that self-warmth and the shame demons start to have their volume turned down,
Yes.
and it's just so much easier to move through the world. It's so much easier to deal with diagnoses of all kinds. It's so much easier to find our way in a world that's very difficult right now with global climate crisis, with pandemic, with systemic racism. There's so many things that people are like trying to weights that people are trying to figure out how to live out from under. And another thing I really love is when women who are my age, which is, 60, in their 50s, 60s, 70s go, huh, I am a fully alive sexual being. What fun. I mean, we need these lifts. lifts, right? When the world is so heavy, we need these lifts of, a capacity for gallows humor and a delight in the self and a love of our bodies just as they are. So
Yeah, can I tell you, self-compassion. I think that we are just the human race. We're really bad at that. It's not like, oh, of course I'm going to be nice to myself.
yeah.
And as you were describing, people who have health issues, so they have to watch what they eat. Maybe they have diabetes or whatever it is, right? Or heart disease and stuff like that. And it becomes another chore of, oh, I can't eat that. Oh my God, we're going out to dinner. Oh, what am I going to eat now? And it becomes this burden versus coming from a place of choice. And I love how you said that, to have compassion for yourself, not to beat yourself up that you have this ailment. Now you have to eat a certain way. Oh my God, this is so much work, right?
Yeah. What happens if you're doing it with affection? It's not so much work if there's affection.
And kindness to self, but
Yeah,
we're not. We are our worst critics, right? You hear that all the time.
Yeah. And that's our trauma voice. Those worst critic voices are our trauma voices.
And I like how you say, turn down the volume. I'm your age, I'm 60. So we know what a record player is and a record. And I, and I tease. Now I tell kids when I'm training live, the younger kids coming up and they come through my training and my corporate clients. And Sarah, I'll use an example like where everybody knows your name, from Cheers. And they look at me and I go Google it. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. You got to Google it, So because you're so good at Googling. So it's a big joke, right? The generations are different. But I'll tell you in 60 years of living, more and more, let me take a step back. I think more and more we become, and I don't know if it's wisdom, I don't know what you would call it, but I think that we become more open to, like, there's got to be more than this, or, oh, is this all to life? Like every day is a drag, man.
Yeah.
I think that we're more open to it, but I don't know. What do you see with your clients? Because I'm sure you deal with all range of age, right? I would imagine.
Yes. When young people find this work, they love it. They love it. And it really supports them. But what I really notice is that the older we get, the more our brains are rich, have rich associations. So it's almost, I think about human brains kind of like wine, like beautiful, wonderful vintages of wine that just become richer and deeper the older they get, because there's so much life experience. So when you say a sentence to a room full of 50 to 70 years olds, you can feel the reverberations of the sentence. They're like, ooh, and they go in and they get it. And there's so many associations made. And you say the same sentence to a room full of 20-year-olds, and it's like you're laying a line down on concrete. They like it. They start to integrate it. They start working with the material, but you don't get that rich, juicy, responsiveness that has all kinds of associations connected to it. I love talking about people in the middle years and older years being of value, because so often in our world, there's a minimization of the sweetness of us in our older years.
We minimize ourselves. I mean, I do it all the time. Like someone will say, oh my gosh, your book, you have an international bestseller. I go, yeah. Like I dismiss it. Like that's not an accomplishment. Everybody hasn't published a book, let alone an international bestseller. But I think, whatever, right? We minimize our accomplishments. We minimize how we show up. We minimize. And it's funny, I came to realization probably in the past decade. I know who I was talking to. And I literally said to them, whatever my recommendation was, sales, right? On sales. So it's something with sales. And whatever, they were like the first time they were hearing this, like this was such a revelation. And I looked at them, I go, doesn't everybody know that? And the person looked at me and she goes, no, what? And I was like, you're kidding me. Like everybody doesn't know this. How funny is that we think that just because we have knowledge or an experience or whatever, that everybody has the same thing. It's crazy. Of course they don't. So, but that's why I think we diminish or dismiss our zones of genius or our greatness, because we think, oh, everybody could do it. If because it's easy to us, we think it's easy to us. It can't be that big of a deal. Where to someone else, it is a big deal, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we know from the inside, we know how much of our success is chance. Like that we happened to meet an editor, or that we met somebody who knew an editor, or we were able to find a really good person to partner with us for marketing. That
Yes.
there's some element here, there's a sweetness to our success, but because we're on the inside, we see all its nuances, and it sort of feels different from the inside than it feels from the outside. I often
And I do want to comment on that because wow, it's like you're in my head. That was a little weird, Sarah. So when I had written my book, I had written my book when my kids were little, and I mean, it needed work. It was a draft, but just life with kids, it was too much. So I put it on the shelf, and then COVID hit, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a great time! I have time. Let me finish this book. Like it was there. Like I needed to do it right for myself, really not for anybody else, but for myself. And I remember I was doing networking, and I had hired a gentleman from Serbia, beautiful graphic artist. He did my wonderful cover. I had an editor I hired. She edited the book, the whole thing. And it's like, well, what do I do now? So I was networking with someone, and oh, what are you working on? I'm like, oh yeah, I have this book. I go, I don't know what to do next. She goes, oh my God, my best friend for like 40 years. She does publishing, and she's on her own for 20 years. She's been in this space I'm like, oh, like, can you share her with me? Within 10 minutes talking to her, done. And we became, she had somebody who got me to the bestseller status. It was meant to be. But here's the thing. And I think this goes to what we're talking about too. You have to be open to the solution finding you sometimes, and open yourself to hear it, but you have to be in a good place to be able to allow that type of synchronicity in, right?
Yeah. And the more you work with those unconscious contracts, I will never have good luck. If you think you'll never have good luck, then you won't be open. You won't see, oh, this is a moment of good luck.
That's
Or
right.
I will not trust anyone else. If you work with that contract, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'll trust. Even if this goes wrong, it doesn't matter so much. There are more opportunities. Having somebody betray my trust for one little minute is not going to destroy me the way that I thought it would. Let that go. And then we can move forward, explore what are the partnerships in this world that feel good? Who do we get to work with? Who can do beautiful work with us? And unless we're kind of moving towards letting ourselves be in relationships with humans, which a lot of trauma survivors find really difficult. I just want to acknowledge that there are reasons that is difficult.
Yeah.
But as we work with those traumas, the world also opens to us because we open to the world.
How have you seen with your clients and the folks that you work with? How has doing this kind of work, let's talk business, right? Because this is a business platform. So how can working with these contracts help us with our career, our business, whatever we're trying to build, depending on where we are in our career and business? What's the connection there?
In business, whether we're working for somebody else or we're entrepreneurs, the most important capacity is the ability to receive feedback about how our efforts have been going, so that we can see where things need to be changed, change them, and move forward. The whole business cycle of do, check, adjust is completely dependent on our capacity to check. We can't check if we have contracts to, for example, never make a mistake, be perfect every time,
Yeah.
never take a false step. If we have those, or not let anybody, this is a good one. I will not let anybody tell me anything bad about myself. If they're doing that, I will believe they are disrespecting me. There's no way in. We've got the castle walls up. Then all we can do is do. We don't get to check. We don't get to adjust. So no matter who we are, and what we want, if we want to move forward, we need to have a capacity to go, oh, yeah, that didn't work so well. I'll do something different. And that didn't work so well. That moment is actually a healthy grief moment. It's a moment of mourning that what we've done before isn't working so well in this moment, and that we can try something different. If we don't believe that we can try anything different, if we believe that we're a one-trick pony, then we're a little stuck too. We don't get to receive feedback.
Humans, man, oh
Humans.
man, we got a lot of crap going on, Sarah.
It's because of those sweet little amygdalas. Those sweet little amygdalas.
I like how you talk about it. It's like, you better activate now, right? That's what I'm thinking in my head. You're going super limit. I'm like, no, it better activate and it better do it right. See how strict we are with ourselves and unkind we are with ourselves. And you wonder why we have these contracts, right? That sometimes are inflicted, but sometimes they're self-inflicted. Again, because we look for the I'm not smart. Oh, I got a bad grade on that test again. See, I'm not smart, right? We validate those false beliefs in the first place, right? So we're really rough on us humans. We're rough on ourselves.
We are. We're so rough on ourselves.
We're out of time. I know this goes so fast. So here's the deal, guys. I don't know about you, but I think I need more Sarah in my life. I love her voice. I love her calmness. Have you met me? Not calm. So this the Sarahs in the world I love, because it's just very soothing for me to have conversations with someone like you, Sarah. So thank you so much for your lovely energy and for the work you're doing, because I think that we are really bad critics of ourselves. And again, no judgment with that. It's how we're taught, from eons of running from the saber-toothed tigers or whoever, that we are taught to protect, fear. And we don't even realize now we do it all the time. And it's dangerous because it's holding us back from our career or business, whatever. So thank you so much for the work you're doing and for the book that you just published. I want to give the book one more time.
Affirmations for turbulent times.
I love it. Affirmations for turbulent times. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but if anybody thinks we're not in turbulent times, whoa, like read the book, because we are really in turbulent times and we need some help here, right?
Yeah. So there's the Your Resonant Self Workbook. If you're going, oh, I have some of those contracts, I want to work on those. That's this book. If you're like, this was fun, I felt better after Connie and Sarah were talking, then you'll enjoy Affirmations for Turbulent Times, because it takes you through all kinds of things that we touched on today about just acknowledging the way our brains work and bringing ourselves to a place that's got a little more hope, a little more resilience, a little more gallows humor, a little bit more lightness.
And we need it, Sarah. With everything happening in the world, I think we need a little bit more just compassion, kindness for self. And I think it starts at home, right? That saying, I do believe it starts with us. And then if we can find compassion and kindness, it's easier to project that out and deal with others in the same way, because we're comfortable with ourselves, right? And we're calmer with ourselves and all of those things. So guys, go to Sarah's website. It's sarahpeyton.com. Sarah is SARAH, Peyton.com. If you have a question for Sarah, please email her at sarah@sarahpeyton.com. And you are giving us a free meditation gift.
Yes,
right?
yes. On the website, on yourresonantself.com, there's a fabulous offer of guided meditations. If you liked my voice like Connie does, then they're in my voice.
I'm going to download you and listen to you 20 times a day. What, are you kidding me? Thank you so much for being on, and thank you for sharing that free gift with my peeps. I always appreciate those free gifts, because I really believe that as we have these conversations, it's like the little tippy top of the iceberg, and that these resources that your website has stuff, and then these free gifts, it just allows the listeners, right, for all of us to kind of dip our toe and see, this makes sense to me. Oh, I want to go a little bit deeper. And it's just a real nice, gentle way for people to listen and then see what resonates with them. And then the free gifts are like the next step, I feel, to help us move that needle on whatever change that we're going through. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I really am appreciative of that.
Thank you so much, Connie. It was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
Same. I feel the same. Thank you. Thank you. And we have a new friend. So I'm always happy to meet new people and learn, because I'm always about learning as well. So thanks again, Sarah. I truly enjoyed our conversation. And I hope you will join me weekly as we question and build and discover together Doesn't matter what change you're going through. Again, whether you choose it or it's thrust upon you, my guests and I hope we have some ideas, some just ways of thinking or shifting your thinking, or a tip or an idea or a story that Sarah or I shared that you think, oh, I can do that. That feels right to me. Download the free gift and follow Sarah. Again, go to the website, sarahpeyton.com, and just check it out. See how you can move the needle on your journey of change. Thank you again, Sarah. Thank you all for tuning in to Enlightenment of Change. Which show am I doing? I have two, Sarah, so I get a little confused. But thanks for tuning into Enlightenment of Change. Me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.net. I am honored to have you every week, and I always hope that my guests and I provide something that you can learn today, apply today, and watch the magic that just will transpire and happen in your life. That's what I want for you. And again, I'm honored that you're here. And I truly enjoy having you tune in week to week. So thank you so much. Thank you again, Sarah. And everybody, have such a super week. I'm wishing you well. Thanks so much.